Welcome to Three Witches and a Druid podcast, a Canadian podcast about paganism in today's modern society. And now, Three Witches and a Druid podcast presents The Thieves of Dagdad.
Did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green? Was the holy Lamb of God in England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth on a clouded hill? Was Jerusalem built there in England's green and pleasant land? Let it rain, let it rain. Wash the scales from my eyes. Let it rain, let it rain. Let me see again. Bring me my bow of burning gold. Bring me my arrows of desire. I shall not sleep till the clouds unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. Let it rain, let it rain. Tears of blood fall out of the sky. Let it rain, let it rain. Wash me clean again. From the frozen waters, the King will rise again, with two suns in the sky. I shall not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. Let it rain, let it rain. Tears of blood fall out of the sky. Let it rain, let it rain. Set me free again. See the gleaming spires of the citadel. The King and Queen will dwell in the Jerusalem be rebuilded here in this trivial time, in this land of fear, in Jerusalem, where the Grail remains. Walk into the light and dissolve the chains. Oh, oh, oh.
is her secret place. From hence she comes forth on the churches into light. Here is her cup, filled with its poisons in these horrid veils. And here her scarlet veil, woven in pestilence and war. Here is Jerusalem bound in chains in the dens of Babylon.
Welcome back to Three Witches and a Druid. We are still on Zoom at this point here in Nova Scotia, and we are talking about our experiences in daily lives living as pagans. And tonight's topic is resources for either people curious about paganism, new people to the pagan path, possibly some resources for even people that have been walking the path for a long time. My name is Margot.
And I am Maeve.
Gwen.
And I'm Brian. So it's funny you say that because Maeve here has just mentioned a book I've never heard of, but the rest of you know quite well. So this episode is mostly, it's about resources that we have found useful as we've walked our paths through life. They could be, like you said, good for people new to this, who are curious, or people who've been around for as long as any of us. So maybe the first section we could talk about is other podcasts. Are there any other like witchy or druid or pagan podcasts you guys enjoy?
I have a few. I've surveyed a number and I keep hearing about other ones. So I a lot to do. There's a few that I do listen to, but then I end up going to history, mythology, and, philosophy ones that support my practice, but maybe are not pagan in origin, but they're pagan adjacent. And I really feel that they fill out my practice. But I do love, and I'm not a chaos magician, but I do love Rune Soup. And I would recommend that to a number of people. It's a podcast out of Tasmania now, and he is on a permaculture farm, and he's been a chaos magician and interesting dude for a while. And I don't always agree, but I recognize brilliance when I see it. I'm always happy to learn. He always has interesting people on there. So that's a specifically pagan one. We were talking, I remember when we started this, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, whatever it was, about Canadian ones. And I really went on a hunt. And I don't know how I missed that. The Fat Feminist Witch, which is a, massively popular one, was a girl out of Windsor. So Windsor, Ontario, not Windsor, Nova Scotia. And she's fabulous. I'm not her target audience. I think I'm a little old, but I can still appreciate. And if I want to know how a millennial feels about certain pagan issues or whatever, and I think I'm missing what's going on in the world, if I tune into what she's saying, if I search her extensive catalog, because she's been doing this for several years now, I can go, oh, okay, I see, I get it. She's very articulate and thoughtful, but very entertaining. So those are two specifically pagans ones. I listen to Myths and Legends, which is a very fun one, a retelling of, stories we all know and love, and Weird Studies, which is a arts and philosophy one, but coming at it from the weird angle. Again, two Canadians, one living in the States. Interesting dudes. So I have an extensive list, history of Western esotericism, and I have a tarot one, Fortune's Wheelhouse, that I listen to round out that practice. But yeah, I used to spend a lot of time on the road pre-pandemic, and that's where on my long drives. Now it's basically while I housekeep. I often I'll have the podcast running the way I used to story CBC radio.
Yeah.
In my younger years, and now I listen to pagan and pagan-friendly podcasts while I go about my day.
I think you covered them all, Gwen.
Oh gosh, there are so many podcasts.
I know there are. There's a lot.
And so many good ones that I couldn't possibly even try them all. Brian keeps suggesting a few that I haven't got to yet.
Well, the thing is, too, when you say that, that is the beautiful thing about right now as compared to 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
35 years ago when I was beginning out, there just was nothing. I mean, even to find something, and you had one book you found, and that's the only book you had for 5 years.
I agree. Yeah.
Now there's podcasts, there's internet, there's books. There's just so many wonderful things. Now it's overwhelming. And what's the good advice and what's the bad advice, at the same time.
Right.
But it is a very fortunate thing. I know when the Witching Hour started back in 91, and that was like the only sort of anything you would hear. There was no internet, here on the radio. It's really nice today to be able to have all that. Pick and choose.
Right.
Choosing is a really nice thing.
So does Maeve and Margot have any podcasts you guys listen to, or?
I don't know if I have any pagan ones that I listen to. The ones I enjoy, aren't really pagan focused or anything. So,
well, similar to Gwen, my time is very much consumed with podcasts at the moment, so I have quite a huge list. The two most well-known Druid ones, the most well-known Druid one of all podcasts is called Druid Cast. And it's out of England. It is done by Dav the Bard from Obod. Pretty much any Druid I know has heard of Druid Cast. It's just well known. The ADF equivalent to Druid Cast would be a podcast called Druids and Cars Going to Festivals.
Ah, yes.
It's two Druids in the States, often driving the festivals, and they're talking in the car about various Druid-y type topics. They're both ordained priests. So there's anything from how many more funerals they're covering than they ever expected to worship in homes and running their groves, etc., etc. So they're really good. Some of the other podcasts I've been listening to in a pagan sense is Down at the Crossroads is very good. It only comes out, I think, every 2 months. They're about 2 hours. It's a very good one. I also listen to Rune Soup. Coffee and Cauldrons is another one I listen to. It's very witchy, but it's good. And the new ADF one is called Triskele. It's done by a couple of members of the Mother Grove, which is good. In the show notes for this, I'll link all of these resources.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So you don't have to go Googling anything.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
I tend to look more, I would use YouTube. Like if I come across something oftentimes, might be a podcast, but I use YouTube as opposed to specifically. I enjoy a lot of historical thing, mythology, and modern day things I enjoy too. But, I don't think about podcasts that often, I guess, because I'm what do you mean? I'm using the computer? No, or my phone. But some of them, I have listened to a couple of these. Yes, indeed.
It's funny you say that because Karen's a big podcast listener. And I asked her, what do you use to listen to podcasts? She uses YouTube.
Yeah.
The amount of people that use YouTube to listen to podcasts, I think, is mind-blowing.
Yeah, we're on YouTube.
Yeah, we are.
So
it only makes sense. The viewers on there, they're not as much as a podcast listener, but they're up there.
Yeah, because I tend to use YouTube to find anything that might strike my fancy.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
So the next thing I have listed here is blogs. Are there any blogs you guys enjoy?
So I sign up to, and I know you do the same, Pathos and Wild Hunt, and they do a curated list of blogs that they dump in your email. And I love John Beckett. I've followed him for years.
Yeah. That's
American Druid, and he's thoughtful and interesting and quirky, and I really enjoy his writing. Our own Nova Scotian Cindy Brannon, she was at Pathos, but she's gone on to bigger and better. But you can find her blog stuff, which is witchy and Hecatean and very well written, at her website, which is Keeping Her Keys. So she's like a local person for us, and she's, got some worldwide renown, but it's well deserved. But I often will just kind of skim through. I have my favorite writers at Pathos or at Wild Hunt.
Yeah.
But I'll skim through what they send me, and some are better than others, but it kind of keeps you up with what's going on in pagan thought by the people who are thinking. Yeah.
So unlike podcasts, blogs for me is like a one-time check sort of thing. Some of the blogs I definitely check out are Philip Cargom from the UK. He was Archdruid of Obod for a while, as well as Dav the Bard's blog. Dav the Bard is probably the most charismatic person you'll ever meet on the internet. His blog is excellent. I'll link it in below. And a little bit of self-promotion. The Grove of Nova Scotia Druids has a blog that's... I think we keep it up to date pretty well, but once a week, various points of views from members of our Grove. I read it.
Awesome.
Great.
Excellent.
The next on my list was online communities. So in this sense, I sort of listed things such as ADF, of course, and OBOD as really strong Druid communities. There must be stuff like that in the witching world. There's the Temple of Witchcraft.
Yeah, that's quite a strong online community. I know people who are involved in that and seem to be very dedicated to it and get a lot out of it. Yeah.
I've never heard anybody with Temple of Witchcraft go, no, I don't like this, I'm out.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all really like it, and they really, any of the training that goes on, they're all very, very pleased.
At some point, we'll rope some of the Nova Scotia ones into an interview or something.
I think that would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know plenty of people. Yeah.
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 Yeah, for sure. I'll blow Cindy Brannon's horn. So her keepingherkeys.com, you can go to the website. She operates a community out of an app. I was part of it for a while, mostly because everything she has, like I felt like there was value in it, and I paid my monthly subscription, and I could never keep up because I have a challenging life the last few years with all of the output that the community put out, and it was, really well curated and everything. And they literally kicked me out and said, we don't want your money anymore because I didn't participate enough.
Oh, wow.
If they don't feel you're getting value from the community, they're like, oh, come back later when you are, sort of thing. And I was like, fair enough. I wanted to support a local person and be able to drop in and out and grab resources as I needed, but I was not actually, I guess, being enough of a community member. They felt that I wasn't getting my money's worth. So they were like,
that's actually really big of them, instead of just taking your money and not caring.
my $9 or whatever it was come automatically out of my bank account once a month.
Yeah.
That was money well spent. And that was sort of, I'm a big GoFundMe for a local project. I like to see local people. I'll throw my money at anything to support the people in the community around me. But, I appreciate that. I could see myself rejoining at a later time when I have time in my life for that type of thing. Yeah.
Right.
That's one I could, again, I would recommend heartily. Trying to think of some others, but there are quite a few, and as many shades of paganism as there are, there's a community out there for you online.
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you the amount of communities I'm in right now on Facebook. I'm pretty positive I only use Facebook at this point for pagan communities. I'm part of the Maritime Pagan community, the Halifax Pagan community, the Cape Breton Pagan community, the Valley Pagan community, the South Shore Pagan community, the Druid Nematon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, all the ADF groups, probably 8 or 9 OBOD groups. And the other website that's really good for that sort of thing is Reddit. If you type Reddit and pick a path, there's a community on there somewhere for you.
Really?
Yeah. Now, Reddit can be a pretty toxic place, but if you can find a good community, be happy.
So that's interesting. See, now all of that's Greek to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I do know that, maritime pagans and all that I have on my Facebook. And there's a couple, that send nifty things and, talk about stuff. But that's really all Greek to me. I'm an old-fashioned, on paper kind of girl.
So we shouldn't get into TikTok witches then.
No, but what has become popular on TikTok, and my kid is rolling her eyes because she's known this since she was 5 years old. The people who are putting their thing out in TikTok, they say where their sun, their moon, and their rising are.
Yeah.
Astrology
No.
has become very popular on TikTok.
Yeah.
And people talking, well, I have this in my moon, and so I did this today, on. And I'm like, really? Isn't that interesting?
Now, it's funny, though, because communities like that, like I'm on TikTok mostly just for shits and giggles. That can be a relatively toxic community. That's where you got the whole cursing the moon and fae magic. And I don't know if you guys knew anything about that or remember any of that.
Yeah, I remember the brouhaha about it anyway. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's where all that came from. On TikTok, the plethora of gurus is insane. If you pay me $5 a month, I will teach you the ways of Scott Cunningham, who you've never heard of. But I'm going to tell you everything from his book.
Yes.
That I can get at the library, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Because talking about resources, and yes, it's written back in the 90s, probably late 90s and whatnot, but you can never go wrong with a Scott Cunningham book. The good old guide for the solitary practitioner. If you're starting out, you can't go wrong. And all of his books on elements and this and that, you really can't go wrong. If you're an old-fashioned in paper kind of person like me, and it has been a few years, you can't go wrong there.
That's a great segue into the next section. Books.
Mm-hmm.
Books, I'm sure you guys can talk about.
One thing I was going to mention, like even used books and used bookstores, one of my favorite resources when I used to come and join Maeve on the radio show was the Magical Almanac.
Oh, yes.
And it didn't matter what year it was. Like I had a collection of probably 15 years worth of Magical Almanacs. No matter what topic the radio show was going to be on, you could find 2 or 3 spells in your books, or 2 or 3 little interesting stories or something. They're just little 1 and 2 page bite-sized pieces of information, mythology, historical fact.
It is a great, and if you buy the yearly one, it has the astro weather in the middle.
Yeah.
Where the moon is, where this is, where that. So it is great. Oh, yeah, you don't throw those out. They're wonderful little books.
I think I actually gave those all to Gwen for one of the prison libraries because mine are all gone. Yeah.
Yes, you did. You donated them.
That's really, really good. Now, though I always knew the principles, without necessarily knowing the names of them, but I finally have sat down and read however you want to say it, the Kabbalion. It's a book of Hermetic philosophy, written by 3 initials. And I'm going to tell you, when the days come that I may be teaching again, I'm going to tell people you got to read this. It is great, just the basic principles. It was written long before quantum physics became, a common topic. Was a common science to be studied. And that's really, really good. And we were talking about Temple of Witchcraft. If you are interested in learning energy work and you're not quite sure, you want a really great step-by-step. You can even get the CDs to go with it. And that's The Inner Temple of Witchcraft by Chris Penzak. That is a marvelous book to start to learn about energy work. That's a really, really great one.
And he has a fabulous voice on the CDs as well. I mean, we used to have a lot of different meditation CDs at Little Mysteries. And some of them, the voice was just, I cannot do it. I cannot do it. But I tell you, Christopher Penzak's voice is wonderful.
Yeah, you're listening to him. But he has a whole series of books that are lovely. But just as a beginner, and truthfully, this book, you wouldn't even have to be a pagan to use it.
No, exactly.
It's very, very good. And never discount, as Gwen was saying earlier, your public library. A lot of times, especially a lot of these things, they cost, some of these books and CDs are quite expensive. There's no doubt about it. Look in your public library. If you're in a place where there's more than one library in your town and they share, go online to your public library and, keyword, maybe you want tarot. Maybe you want, spells or witches or this or druid, whatever the case might be. You'd be very surprised what you can find.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the public library, just get it back on time. Heck, the Halifax Public Library doesn't even have late fees anymore.
No.
So I don't know, they're going to go broke. I alone used to give them a lot of money. I would forget. But no, the public library is a really, really great place. And even a magical almanac. You don't even have to order that special. A lot of just local bookstores have that.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about something like Magical Almanac, I'm really glad you brought that up. I hadn't thought of that one, is it has little snippets from all kinds of different tradition.
Yeah.
And different cultures and all of that. Because then you might say, oh, this was interesting, but this really spoke to me. So then you can start looking more down the rabbit hole. Well, I thought maybe I liked Celtic paganism, but this Egyptian really interests me even more. And don't get discouraged. I will say this to people. If you don't find something that really, really resonates with you immediately, just keep looking And I mean, truthfully, too, that one of the best teachers is nature. Learn how to meditate and quiet your mind and go outside. But, that's it. Anyone can have that resource. Any other books you can think of, anybody?
So in Druidry, two of the more recommended books is Druidcraft, The Magic for Wicca and Druidry by Philip Carr-Gomm. The other one is A Druid Handbook, Spiritual Practices Rooted in the Living Earth by John Michael Greer. A lot of modern day Druids read that one. It's very good. Next on my list, now I know him personally, so it's a little different. I really enjoyed The Mysteries of Druidry, Celtic Mysticism and Theory practiced by Brendan Cathbed-Myers.
Yeah.
I tell everybody this. I feel like I should be getting money for recommending this book. The book that turned me on to paganism was The Sacred Balance by David Suzuki.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Every page in that book is pagan theory and practice.
It is.
It's excellent. A book I was a little surprised by, and I picked it up on an audiobook, and it's on the list of recommended reading for one of the training programs through Cherry Hill Seminary and ADF, is The Complete Idiot's Guide to Paganism. And I realized nobody had really done any book reviews about it, but I had it, so I listened. It was shockingly really good. It involved a lot of topics. It covered a lot of things. It's a little dated. You probably could skip the last two chapters because they talk about like Yahoo groups and email lists. But
Yeah.
for somebody brand new to this, it was actually a really good book.
The Idiot's Guide to Astrology is excellent as well.
Oh,
Very comprehensive. It's broken down really well. The Idiot's Guide to Gnostics. Not to the Gnostic Gospels isn't bad either. Try a lot of things. That is also something I would tell people is read a little bit about this. Read a little bit about that. It's always good to try.
the other book I always recommend, similar to Sacred Balance, is called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolben.
Oh, yes.
That whole series of books is excellent.
I have to say, Brian, I don't want to say it changed my life, but it changed my relationship with the natural world because I identified as an animist, but I had a very academic understanding of it. Even though I've been a camper from, my parents had this relationship with nature and it was very important and we did it back to the land sort of thing. And Dave and I, even still, that whole relationship with nature was almost about regarding animism was a theoretical, although I loved it and I invested myself in nature and all those sorts of things. It was still that theoretical. So I'd read books like Emma Restall Orr's The Wakeful World and all of those books about animism. And I understood it on a really theoretical level, but he writes in such a conversational way and has these stories backed by science that changed my relationship. Like it changed what I planted in my backyard because I can't plant one apple tree anymore. That's cruel.
Yeah.
I would never do that now that I understand that they need that relationship with another apple tree. I have my poor specimen magnolia out there, but I love it to death and I hope that suffices. That was planted years before I read that book, but I wouldn't have said I was a theoretical animist until I read that book and it changed my relationship with the world.
Yeah.
It did.
I think I have the whole series, The Inner Life of Animals, The Secret Wisdom of Nature, and they're all excellent.
Right. I need to expand my reading to those as well then, because what The Hidden Life of Trees did for me was amazing.
So I did read it. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful book.
Do you have any recommendations, Margot?
I think the magical almanacs for the little bite-sized pieces of information that are easy to digest. And like I say, if you're in a bookstore and you find 1997s, buy it for 25 cents or...
That's like a Llewellyn, right, or something? It was Llewellyn?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's many, many different authors from many different places.
And it's also a way you might find an author you like.
Yes.
As well. If you read an article by somebody that you think, well, I don't really care for their writing style, then you know not to buy one of their books. But if you read another article that you really like by someone, I'm sort of thinking back to when I first started doing more pagan reading and research and stuff, that it was amazing. I remember noticing, like in television shows and movies and things that were not necessarily presented as pagan, thinking, do they realize that they're, talking about the elements here, and, how many things in our pop culture are based on a lot of these philosophies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're ever, around, much older people who, farmers and this and that, who would be mighty insulted if you said, oh, you're a pagan, they would freak out,
Yeah.
But they just the way they live and
Yes.
references and all
Their
of that
relationship to the world.
Yes,
Yeah.
the relationship to the world. It's so very interesting to see.
The last category we kind of skipped, but it's okay. News sources. There's only really 2 around the Wild Hunt. It's a bit more of an activist news site. You get a lot of world news that involve paganism in that on the Wild Hunt.
Yeah.
And the other one is Pathos, which is almost more of a collection of articles from various pagan writers. I like Pathos. I'm a subscriber.
Yeah, I am as well. I think along the lines of Pathos, they have a similar setup, but it's called BeliefNet.
Okay.
And like Pathos, it's a wide range of belief systems. And they have a lot of blogs. I'm more of a Pathos girl. But the one thing they have at beliefnet.com, which is very cool, I encourage everybody to go give it a try, is they have a quiz. And it is long. So you got to be prepared to sit probably 10 minutes. And they ask you questions about your relationship with deity and the world and how you see your cosmology and how you see the world. And then along with answering this yes or no or whatever, then you also have to rate it on a scale. Every question is, how important is this to me? Is it really important? Is it not so important? So then it's a yes or no, but it's also of how much value does it have in my belief system? At the end of it, it gives you this printout, which shows you maybe 30 different world religions and where you line up. And so, of course, pagan is top, but then, there's multiple kinds of Buddhism, which showed up in different areas. I was surprised, I've taken it in different times of my life. And as my life, I've had less control over my life, Taoism has become higher up in the rankings of my beliefs because I have to go with the flow, right? I have zero control over the way the world is buffeting me right now. So I have to learn how to go with the current sort of thing. It's funny how that changes. I know my son did it in his early 20s, my eldest, and I thought, raised in a pagan household his whole life, and pagan was there. He came up liberal Quaker.
Wow.
Liberal Quaker is actually, I did one of those years ago, and liberal Quaker was in my top 5.
Yeah, that was his number 1, and I was shocked. But it also explains there are religions that you maybe are not so familiar with. So you learn, there's these commonalities among these top 5 religions, and it gives you a percentage, like you're dead on with this one, you're so-so with this one, you're 70% in belief. Whatever. It's fascinating. And it's always interesting, like if you did a check-in every decade to see where you are in your relationship with community and deity, sort of thing.
That's kind of like the Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I think that's a book you could read every decade and see what you saw differently in it when you were 20, when you were 30, when you were 40, 60, 70, whatever the case might be. That's another one. You could do that, looking at it different.
I think you could. You're right. Do you remember when the movie came out, Janet? It was you, Dave, and I in an empty theater. We went to see the cinematic, whatever, and we were all excited. And I think we literally went early to line up because we were sure that it was going to be packed. And there was 3 of us in this big open theater.
Yeah,
it was terrible.
Crazy. Mind you, I'd go to anything in the theater right now.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Eh? I'm sure you can find it for free on YouTube. But the book is better, as always. But Nick Nolte was fun.
Well, that's all our categories.
Anything anyone else can think of. Just look around, keep searching, and be open to listening to other things.
Resources. Your local witchy shop, esoteric shop, witchy shop, new age shop. They all have bulletin boards. I say all, but the sweeping generalizations always catch you up. You trip over them. But the people I know that start them want to foster community. and they see themselves as a place where community can connect. So they're very supportive. They pass along things. If you have a group that you want to grow, you let them know and they send people to you. Or if you're interested in finding a teacher or whatever, found one of the mentors that meant quite a lot to me for almost 2 decades through Little Mysteries. So I think if you've got that resource of a witchy, esoteric, pagan shop, community is usually part of their mission statement. So that's a resource.
For sure. Yeah.
That's a really good resource, yes, indeed. We have the Neighborhood Witch in Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
Silver Birch Connections is out Timberley, St. Margaret's Bay kind of way. This is Into the Mystic over in Cole Harbor.
Yeah.
So we have a few.
There's one in Truro, too. What's it called?
Oh,
Calling Corners?
Yes, that's a nice little place. Very nice little place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Calling Corners.
Calling Corners, yeah.
Yeah.
And down in the Annapolis Valley, Nan's Rock Shop.
There's Realm as well.
Yep.
What did you say? Rock Shop?
Nan's Rock Shop.
Nan's. Is she still there?
But I thought she was closing.
No, what happened is she moved the shop to back behind the house.
Oh, okay.
Because it is indeed open. I haven't been there because COVID, but apparently it's lovely. And there's a place, a little bit of a place in Middleton now called the Smoke Emporium.
Okay.
Cool.
It's got a little bit of a pagan-y shop out front, and it's also a place you can go and smoke pot.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's all legal, you know. It's
a
place to go and hang out if that's what you're into.
2021.
Yeah, so that's very, very interesting. Well, it has been lovely to be here tonight. If you have any questions or comments, you can certainly contact us on our Facebook page, 3 Witches and a Druid, and anywhere you might see to give us those 5 stars and a thumbs up. We certainly like that as well. And until next time, everyone, merry meet,
Merry part,
and merry meet again.
Blessed be.
This has been 3 Witches and a Druid podcast. Thanks for listening.